scandal. The US is helping Russia. The occupiers have upgraded the Shaheds, and now these drones are almost impossible to shoot down. The Kremlin is celebrating because American technology has come to their aid. How did this become possible, and what is important to know? All the shocking details coming up.
In addition to the war on the front lines, there is also a technological war going on.
Our enemy is, let's say, technologically dangerous, cunning, and unpredictable because they can change everything in an instant.
Communication systems, control systems, and electronic warfare play a significant role. The key issue is complexity in order to be able to counter the enemy.
The speeds are no longer the same. The enemy uses various means to make their drones less vulnerable to our electronic warfare. In
2024, jet-powered Shaheds equipped with electronic warfare countermeasures were spotted over Ukraine.
In fact, they are trying to turn the large, unwieldy Shahed into an FPV analog, which is controlled directly via a radio channel from the territory of the Russian Federation or from occupied territory. That is, this Shahed is equipped with a video camera on board which can transmit footage directly. And again, let me repeat, we're not talking about mobile communication with Ukraine. We're not talking about LTE modems. We're talking about a special dedicated modem. I've brought one to show you. It's about the size of a brick that allows information to be transmitted via radio channels directly to Russia.
This is not the first time the Shahed has been upgraded by the Russians in an attempt to bypass Ukrainian air defenses. CRPA antennas are devices that allow drones to maintain navigation even under intense electronic jamming. These antennas are currently produced in Russia, but the technology was originally developed in Ukraine back in the early 2000s. Now in 2025, the enemy continues to upgrade these birds of death on their territory.
This is the very principle of electronic warfare. Absolutely everything. All the components that a radio receiver has can be jammed. Some are harder, some are easier. It depends on the type of signal. In this case, jamming isn't exactly easy because they use frequency hopping technology across the entire range, which makes it resistant to electronic warfare jamming, but it is still quite possible. So for this, we just need to take a new approach, so to speak, and adapt ourselves to the Russians' new tactics.
The Russians have gone even further. They hid these antennas inside the body, removed them from the wing, and moved them inside the Shahed, right in the center. As a result, the enemy's drones are becoming virtually invulnerable to electronic warfare systems.
What does this tell an observant and intelligent person? It means that the factory has made changes to the Shahed's body specifically for these Chinese antennas. This means the enemy is confident in a long-term and stable partnership with China. We cannot suppress such antennas with our existing electronic warfare systems everywhere across the country.
Sergei Beskresnov also confirmed in a flash that this nuance indicates close cooperation between Russia and China. Russian billionaires are doing everything they can to help Putin in this war, establishing contacts with China and the US, for example, Deripaska.
Access to technology and equipment is also closed off, and there is a range of items that are critical.
In 2024, the Russian LLC Angar 22 purchased Swivin turbojet engines for a total of about $300,000. Officially, they are intended for model aviation. However, these units later found a completely different use. They were installed on a jet-powered modification of the Iranian Shahed drone. At the same time, the owners of Angar 22 are classified, and information about the beneficiaries is hidden. According to old registry data, the founding entity was the joint stock company Kraska, which was linked to Deripaska. Other subsidiary structures, according to documents, are only partially state-owned. But there is also the development corporation Yuginvest. It is associated with a structure belonging to the same Deripaska.
We are familiar with China's experience: free economic zones, minimal taxes, joint ventures.
Supplies to the company linked to Putin's wallet were delivered directly from the Chinese manufacturer Swivin, which also has an American branch, Swivin USA. Angar 22 is already under American sanctions. In fact, the story of Angar is an illustration of how the Russian military-industrial complex, cut off from Western technologies, seeks workarounds, indirectly cooperating with the United States through China under the guise of scientific research.
Russia's share. It's the fourth largest in China's trade turnover. This matters to everyone.
The Russians regularly upgrade their drones to carry out attacks on Ukraine. In the Russian Federation, they have started making them even more deadly for strikes. During attacks on the Sumy region, Russian occupiers began using Shahed drones equipped with anti-tank mines.
And they continue to scale up production further. And as we should understand, having resources, having finances, having every opportunity, in other words, they will not stop.
Monitoring groups report that the Russian Federation is preparing Shahed drones with phosphorus munitions. Being within 150 meters of the impact zone can result in fatal outcomes. The Kremlin is betting specifically on cheap kamikaze drones rather than missiles. That is why they plan to increase the production of Shaheds and other types of UAVs. A plan has been set to produce at least 36,000 strike drones. The Ukrainian side is not resting on its laurels and continues to work on improving its own interceptor drones. And not only that.
Urgent. Putin is preparing to rule until 2050. The British have uncovered the Kremlin's sinister plan. You will be surprised when you hear it. The 73-year-old dictator dreams of sitting on the throne for years to come. And shockingly, there is already a successor. Watch all the details of this sensational investigation right now.
The Russian dictator Putin has already ruled longer than many of his predecessors, and a new publication only adds fuel to the fire of rumors, according to the British tabloid. He allegedly wants to stay in power until the age of 97. And
do you really think people will be able to live to 150 years and beyond? And
Yes, I think when we were heading to the parade, the chairman mentioned this. Well, yes, so at one time, Mr. Berlusconi didn't actively pursue this topic.
his power is so concentrated that the question of when he will leave now sounds less like an expectation and more like rhetoric. The constitution was rewritten, term limits were reset, and he can remain president until 2036.
Modern means of health improvement, advanced medical treatments, and even various complex surgical procedures related to organ replacement now allow humanity to hope that active life will continue differently than it does today.
But the plans, it seems, are even broader. Putin's inner circle is reportedly overseeing projects related to life extension, in which his eldest daughter, Maria Vorontsova, a doctor endocrinologist involved in scientific initiatives, is also participating.
we know that Putin's eldest daughter, endocrinologist Maria Vorontsova, works in this same field. In a field where, to the delight of the ruling elders, technologies of the distant future are mixed together, genome editing to prevent cell division from degrading over time, and 3D printing of entire organs. And various other worldly clownish acts, like meetings with shamans.
Perhaps it's no coincidence that we recently noticed a video where Putin and Xi Jinping discuss how human life will be significantly longer, as if it's preparation for a new era where both the state and its leader will remain in power much longer.
In the past, people rarely lived to 70. Now at 70, you're still a child. And how does Putin respond to that? With the help of biotechnology, organs will be able to be replaced endlessly. People might even achieve immortality. To which Xi Jinping responds once again, some predict that in this century people will be able to live up to 150 years.
Obviously, there's no thought of retirement. He clings to power, ruling not only today but also the decades to come. And everything around him suggests that he has no intention of leaving the political stage anytime soon.
We've long known that the president of the Kurchatov Institute, Mikhail Kovalchuk, is not only obsessed with the Russian genome, not only talks about genetic weapons aimed exclusively at Slavs, but also leads large-scale research in the field of aging and its prevention.
A leader who has set a record for time in power, a school of management without a successor, and scientific technological projects in which his family is integrated. All of this adds up to a troubling image. The image of a person who is not just counting on another term, but on a long-term life in the seat of power.
It's no surprise that when two elderly dictators meet, they discuss how to cheat death. Just as there is no doubt that this question occupies their thoughts more and more with each passing year. How can they freeze this perfect moment and make sure the future never comes? Because in that future, they are not there, which is absolutely unacceptable.
If the sources are to be believed, the price for this has been, and remains, extremely high. Not just for him, but for the entire system in which he has become the center.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
In these very minutes, it's hell on the occupied territories. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Terrifying raids on men. The Kremlin has gone all in. Locals are being grabbed right off the streets and then sent to die at the front. People are in a panic and families are hiding their sons and husbands. All the shocking details. Watch next.
Ole is from the occupied Torres, that's in the Donetsk region. On the third day after his 18th birthday, he went to the local military enlistment office to register. He was immediately told either you sign a contract or it's prison. There is no third option. In
the enlistment office, they threatened me with prison. They said if I didn't sign, I'd be facing a sentence of 5 to 7 years. It was impossible to escape from the training ground. They kept everything under very strict control. There were military patrols stationed at every exit.
The inhumane treatment by Russian instructors drove young guys to suicide. But even those who managed to withstand this pressure didn't live long. Those residents from the occupied territories who end up in the Russian army are sent straight into local assaults after only a brief training. Oleg was lucky, he surrendered immediately and survived.
The attitude of the command towards the recruits. Because we're from the occupied territories, they blame us for everything that's happening, for the war. The command would often say the same thing: get there and we'll drop you some food. We'd reach the designated point, but nothing was ever dropped. We lived in the forest belts without food or water. We chewed on whatever we could.
There are many people like Oleg. The temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine have been incorporated into the Southern Military District. And there, they plan to recruit up to 100,000 soldiers into the Russian army. This was reported by Dmytro Kukarchuk, Deputy Commander of the 3rd Army Corps of the Ukrainian Armed Forces.
Russia has officially incorporated the occupied territories of Ukraine into the Southern Military District, and now it is beginning to mobilize the local population. The occupiers plan to mobilize between 50,000 and 100,000 men aged 18 to 55 to fight against Ukraine. Previously, mobilization was carried out only in the occupied territories of Donetsk, Luhansk regions, and Crimea.
The Russian State Duma has passed a law allowing conscription into the army throughout the entire year, from January 1st to December 31st. Russia has legalized the conscription of residents from the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Now, mobilization can be carried out all year round. Under the new rules, after receiving an electronic summons, a person is required to report to the so-called military enlistment office no later than 30 days.
According to the CNS, occupation military enlistment offices in Melitopol have already received instructions from Moscow to begin compiling military lists of men aged 18 to 50. In Melitopol, they are once again going door to door, checking documents. Especially among utility workers, construction workers, and security guards, those who can be quickly sent to the second line without preparation.
Previously, mobilization activities were conducted only in the occupied territories of Donetsk, Luhansk regions, and Crimea. Now they have expanded to all occupied regions, which indicates yet another attempt by the Kremlin to make up for losses at the front at the expense of Ukrainians.
Forced mobilization in the occupied territories. This is what I was talking about. The number of personnel in the so-called 1st and 2nd Army Corps of the LNR was increased from 35,000 to 100,000 as early as 2022. Now, in some cities in the occupied territories of Luhansk region, the locals themselves call them women's towns. Not because, well, let's say it's not a derogatory term. A complete absence of male population. Total mobilization.
Losses in the so-called meat assaults have to be compensated somehow. The number of contract soldiers and the money for them is decreasing. Total mobilization in the temporarily occupied territories. This is an attempt to make up for the losses. Having survived and ended up in Ukrainian captivity, Oleg realized that his life in the Russian army wasn't worth a dime.
After ending up in the Russian army, I realized it's all bullshit, because they just want to wipe us all out here.
That's all for now. For more hot news from the front, tune in to the next episode.